Hey guys, I'm Marc Colbert, NBC. You're in the garden with NBC. Welcome back for another episode. We're out in one of the more far-flung sites that I garden. I'm at my elementary school where I'm the garden specialist, Franciscan Montessori Earth School in Portland, Oregon. We have a lot of beautifully tended gardens far away, but this kind of weedy looking patch is actually the site of a really cool experiment that's going on that I want to talk to you about today. It's a method of gardening that's both ancient and being looked at with renewed interest, called dryland farming or dryland gardening. The idea is that you take an area and you apply no water. You use the residual water that's in the soil from hopefully what is the rainy season or snow melt or such. And then with a little bit of careful spacing and weed control, you allow the plants to get the water that they need by foraging for it in the soil. So as you know, soil is a complexly structured reality, and depending on the basic size of the particles, for example, what we call sand, silt, or clay, and depending on the organic matter and the microbiome in the soil that's active in there, depending on additions of compost and other things you might have amended the soil with, all that can influence how much water the soil holds. A good soil, though, has a pretty high water retaining capability, and it's certainly enough for us in Oregon to grow crops that are planted in May, harvested in September, and don't receive a drop of water in between. Let me tell you a little bit more about it. We've been experimenting with different crops. We started with tomatoes a few years ago. So we have tomatoes that are spaced. Basically, our dryland spacing is every 6 feet on a triangle point, an equilateral triangle. So each side of the triangle is 6 feet, and we put a plant at every point, a vertex of the triangle. So that ensures that every plant is 6 feet away from each other. We do a lot of mulching as well. We apply a thick layer of wood chip mulch, and there are some weeds. If you walk the field, maybe we'll take a little stroll in just a minute, go look at the tomatoes. And we just harvested potatoes. We had a great harvest this year of potatoes on the dryland farming scheme. This area doesn't have water to it. It's far out. It's way at the end of a soccer field. Our school is way on the other side. And so we just decided that this seemed like a natural place for this experiment. I had read a book years ago by Steve Solomon, a real pioneer in the seed trade. He started Territorial Seed Company, or really built it up. I think he bought it from somebody, but it was very small at the time. He's written extensively. His manual, Growing Vegetables West of the Cascades, was kind of a Bible to me as I began my vegetable gardening in the Portland area, having grown up on the other side of the country in New Hampshire. And he has a thin volume on dryland farming that talked about these prairie farms, these places where there was not a lot of irrigation possible, yet a good crop could still be grown. And over the course of my gardening career, I have been experimenting with various things, and I've been finding some real success across many different kinds of crops. But I wanted to show you, for example, the potatoes that we grew this year. So we were just harvesting these potatoes. This is a vine that came out, but it's dead. It's not that impressive in terms of its greenery, but it is impressive, I think, in terms of its size. These were big, healthy vines. And of course, I fertilized in each hole at 6 feet apart. But this had a beautiful structure to it all summer long. I did hill up a little bit with mulch at one point in the season. And let me show you some of our harvest today. These are Russian bananas, which is a variety that was recommended. But we're getting some really substantial, really great looking crop. It's all perfect. I mean, with Russian bananas, you do get a lot of oddities too, like some weird heads and arms on a potato. But getting really good yields, I would say, sometimes as many as 20 of these potatoes per plant, which is great. I'm not sure I didn't weigh it based on poundage, but really getting a good substantial crop for zero water, almost zero tending as well. The other thing we've been growing is a whole variety of tomatoes, and I found that especially cherry tomatoes tend to do great under this regime. We have some, let me grab some from here. We're growing this really cool larger cherry tomato called Chadwick's cherry. Beautiful flavor. Love the result of this. The yields are amazing. I saved a lot of seed with the students today just because it's done so well. I want to make sure we have plenty of it. Here's a little one we grew the other year called Candyland. We're just getting tomatoes loaded with trusses with fruit like this. They look beautiful. They taste amazing. Tomatoes, especially with dryland farming, do not get diluted by irrigation. You can dilute the flavor of your tomato, I've found over the years, with irrigation. And actually on the rooftop garden where I garden, I've had a hard time producing a good tasting tomato because our soil is so shallow. I have to water so much. Tomatoes all wind up tasting kind of watery. This is exactly the opposite. The flavors are concentrated. Everything is packed with flavor in this tomato, and each tomato is truly a treasure. The other thing with not watering is the soil. I let some of these tomatoes just freely vine on the ground, and the soil is dry where the tomatoes sit on the ground. If you have wet soil all the time and your tomato comes in contact with the soil, you've probably found this over your experience, that tomato will start to rot, and you often lose a lot of the tomatoes. So if you didn't get to your trellising, or it's not substantial enough and certain vines fell over, you're gonna lose a lot of those tomatoes in a standard garden system, irrigated garden system. But with dryland, things can just sit on the ground. The ground's bone dry. There's no problem. At least the top of the ground is. There is a certain amount of weed control you need to do right at the get-go. And I will say it took us about 2 or 3 years to really get most of the weeds under control. We don't have them all under control. And this area is really kind of an afterthought in our gardening plan. So we don't get out here. I don't get out here very much during the summer to tend. But we do try to get the big weeds out early on. And then, like I said, we've been developing is a mulch layer, which really suppresses the weeds during the main part of the growing season. I will pull back some of that mulch coming into the fall now, and we will cover crop heavily, both with nitrogen fixing, something like peas, beans, vetches, fava beans, those kind of things, and then some grains, maybe some rye. Rye grows very well in cold conditions, so it's a good one for here. Maybe some wheat, maybe some oats, such like that. So we're building the soil structure to store even more water during our rainy season, and then we'll have the capacity to do more and more and more dryland. The other key for us is to really try to get the crops in by May, because we're still having abundant rain through April, sometimes even through May, and that becomes kind of the cutoff for us when we head into our seasonal drought. So depending on your region, of course, timing can be very important. And some regions receive abundant rainfall during the summer, so it's not that much of an issue. You don't have to worry about that. But if you're in a part of the country where irrigation is an issue, where water is scarce, where just either the infrastructure to deliver that water or the time it takes to haul hoses back and forth takes up a big part of your summer, you should really seriously think about dryland agriculture. It's a really wonderful way to economize on water, use just what nature provides, and in many cases produce a really tasty crop. With the case of tomatoes, potatoes, I'm not going to expect a great taste there or much different than irrigated because they have a low water content just to start with. But I do love the fact that I can just kind of set it and forget it, right? The potatoes go in May, that's it. I just maybe do one hilling up and boom, they're on their own. They don't need any weeding. Of course, the other thing about dryland is once you get those initial weeds that the rains will bring, there's no additional irrigation, so no additional weeds will sprout. So that's the genius of it too. So anyway, I can't recommend dryland agriculture. Let's go for just a quick stroll. Again, it's not picture perfect. I did try some corn that did not do so well. You can see here there's a few tomatoes from last year that just sprung up on their own. There is quite a thick mulch, some dandelions and some grasses coming up. This is a cherry called white cherry that did pretty well. Getting into sun gold. The sun golds are amazing. They're wonderful. They do very well in the dryland scheme. You can see like right here down below me, right here is really good mulch and very few weeds. We're still fighting the weeds up near the fence. And then as we come into the Chadwick cherry here, vines sprawling everywhere, you'll see the bamboo. I did intend to train them up. I never got to it. So they just sprawled, but they did just fine. I've had a bunch of kids trampling here. We pulled off probably a 500 or 600 cherry tomatoes in the last few days. So just this alone still looks good, but it's not as good as it's decorated beautifully. And then we have just a big section here where you can see the kind of pits and holes where we've dug out our potatoes. There's still a few kicking around here and there. Anyway, you can almost see that equilateral triangle plan on the land based on where the holes are. There's our school way in the background, so you can see it's an area that's kind of forgotten, but it's been yielding great for us, and we're seeing great results each and every year that we continue to work it. We're seeing better and better results. So that's really encouraging. We're going to keep dry landing because for us here in the West, it's an important technique to conserve water, which is becoming more and more of a precious resource. We may not always be able to count on these abundant rains during the winter, and we know we're in a seasonal drought during the summer, so we've got to work to conserve our resources. This is a great way to just bank the water in the soil, use large spacing, and then also keep weeds down to eliminate anything that's competing for that soil-based water. If you're interested in more dryland farming information, Oregon State University, OSU, has a great website on it. And if you just Google Oregon State University, OSU Dryland, you'll get to their dryland page. There's a lot of recommendations. A lot of farmers are trying different varieties and reporting on their results. So it's really useful. And you can, you can try it at home. If you've got extra land where you can afford bigger spacing and you don't want to water, perfect for you. So I hope that was helpful. Hope that introduced you a little bit to something, a concept maybe you're familiar with, maybe you're not. It's really a wonderful way to grow your crops, water-free. Just let nature do it. And like I said, in return, you get either a bounty or an even better tasting bounty than maybe you could grow with irrigated. So it's something to think about. Wishing you well in your garden. Hope the harvest is plentiful. We'll see you next month. Take care.